Thank you for joining me. My name is Jedi Master Josh. Today, I was going to talk about the situation involving Brett Kavanaugh, who, if you don't know, is a circuit judge in the D.C. Court of Appeals, and he was nominated to take over Justice Kennedy's seat following his retirement. So this is the nominee for the Supreme Court by President Trump. Brett Kavanaugh is somewhat notable for having worked for Ken Starr as an associate counsel in the Office of the Independent Counsel, and helped author the Ken Starr report, or just the Starr report rather, on Bill Clinton, which actually sort of was the case for the impeachment for Bill Clinton. It brought forward the case to impeach Bill Clinton. He also, Brett Kavanaugh, worked on the Florida recount, the famous Florida recount in which George Bush wound up winning the presidency against Al Gore. So he helped try to impeach Bill Clinton, and he also worked on the Florida recount, helping George Bush become president. So he's already right off the bat maybe not the favorite of some individuals on the left. And I say that to just preface the situation. I'm going to go through what's going on with Judge Kavanaugh and try to go through it in a sort of balanced, even-headed way and try to just present the facts. So, Kavanaugh was nominated on July 9th. He was given the highest recommendations possible from the American Bar Association, which is basically the gold standard for legal credentials. So he got nominated. He's completely qualified from a legal standpoint. Well, during his confirmation hearings, which went from September 4th to September 7th, senators, Democratic senators, in particular, accused Brett Kavanaugh of, among many things, trying to hide documents from when he was working in the Bush administration. Well, Kavanaugh turned over more documents than basically anybody ever has in Supreme Court history. The amount of documents that he turned over, millions of documents, was really unprecedented. And the idea that he was, withholding information just really seemed kind of silly from that standpoint. There were accusations from people like Kamala Harris that he was somehow tied to the law firm that is basically working for President Trump right now, and that they were discussing the Russia investigation. That accusation really didn't hold any water whatsoever. Throughout the hearings, it was really just a ridiculous zoo. I mean, you had yelling and screaming and gnashing of teeth, and there really wasn't much substance to it. You just had ridiculous outbursts. People accusing Brett Kavanaugh of somehow trying to, basically revert women back to the 1800s or something like that. Over 220 people wound up being arrested during the hearings to the confirmation hearings for Judge Kavanaugh, and there were some ridiculous outbursts. One of the highlights being Linda Sarsour of the Women's March fame, screeching hysterically before being dragged out by the police. That was actually fairly entertaining to watch. I have to admit that much. So he goes through the confirmation hearings, and the Democrats, they don't have the votes. They wish that they could have stopped Gorsuch from being nominated to the Supreme Court. It's actually surprising that President Trump has had the opportunity to nominate two people to the Supreme Court. That's I'm not sure if that's unprecedented, but that's pretty rare, at least, to be able to nominate two Supreme Court justices within your first 2 years. But in any case, the Democrats don't have the votes. They don't actually have the votes to be able to stop Brett Kavanaugh. And he's completely qualified. Again, from a legal standpoint, he is going to probably even still, after what I'm about to explain, get confirmed. But most certainly, he was qualified to be confirmed at that point. Well, the Senate Judiciary Committee on September 20th was going to basically vote to push forward his nomination and make it to where the full body of the Senate would vote for him, where he would, certainly, almost certainly at least, get the 51 votes and he would become a Supreme Court justice, just like that. Well, not so fast, Brett. On September 20th, again, the vote was going to happen, but that wound up getting delayed. And it got delayed because of an allegation. And the allegation is that Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted a woman in the 1980s, sometime in the 1980s when he was a teenager in high school. The allegation, which is made by a woman named Christine Blasey Ford, who is a research psychologist in Northern California, is certainly a serious allegation on its face. Ford contacted the Washington Post in July and also had a letter describing the allegations to Senator Feinstein through her representative in Congress, Democrat Ann Eshoo. So she's in touch with the Washington Post in July, this lady who's making the allegations, Christine Blasey Ford. And she's also in contact with her senator, or her congressional rep, and through her rep, she sends a letter to the ranking Democrat member of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Feinstein. So, that's in July. Ford had reportedly wished for her name and the allegation to both remain confidential, but it was actually leaked in September. So, I believe it was The Intercept that first basically reported on this information. And after that, Ford did an interview with the Washington Post, which I'm going to quote from now. Ford said that one summer in the early 1980s, Kavanaugh and a friend, both, quote, stumbling drunk, Ford alleges, corralled her into a bedroom during a gathering of teenagers at a house in Montgomery County. While his friend watched, she said, Kavanaugh pinned her to a bed and on her back and groped her over her clothes, grinding his body against hers and clumsily attempting to pull off her one-piece bathing suit and the clothing she wore over it. When she tried to scream, she said, he put his hand over her mouth. I thought he might inadvertently kill me, says Ford, now a 51-year-old research psychologist in Northern California. He was trying to attack me and remove my clothing. Ford said she was able to escape when Kavanaugh's friend and classmate at Georgetown Preparatory School, Mark Judge, jumped on top of them, sending all three tumbling. She said she ran from the room, briefly locked herself in a bathroom, and then fled the house. So, what this is a serious allegation. Obviously, on its face, that is serious. You've got two guys in a room, two teenagers in a room with a 15-year-old girl, and they, one of these guys, boys, pins this girl to the bed, attempts to, possibly take her clothes off, holds her mouth while she tries to scream. Obviously very serious allegations, something that nobody should take lightly in any way, shape, or form. But the problem is, we live in a country, and we have to live in a country where facts and evidence matter. And if you are going to accuse something of accuse somebody of something like that, something that serious, we have to be able to look at the evidence, and we have to be able to judge from whatever available information that we have. That's all we can do, especially when it's such a serious allegation. It's not something that should be taken lightly in terms of the allegation and in terms of the person being accused and what that would potentially mean for that person. So, I'm going to go through what we know. Both Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh have unequivocally denied the claim. So, Mark Judge is the other guy that was in the room, apparently. He is a conservative columnist. He writes for the Daily Caller, among other places. They have both unequivocally denied the claim, which obviously isn't surprising. But Brett Kavanaugh has said that he has basically never even been to a party like that at any point in time. Last Friday, the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Charles E. Grassley released a letter from 65 women who say they knew Kavanaugh when he attended high school from 1979 to 1983 at Georgetown Prep, an all-boys school in North Bethesda. Quote, "Through the more than 35 years we have known him, Brett has stood out for his friendship, character, and integrity," the women wrote. "In particular, he has always treated women with decency and respect. That was true when he was in high school, and it remains true to this day." So, what you have there is a pretty strong counterbalance of evidence against that woman's claim. That's a pretty large group of people, and these are people who say that they knew Brett Kavanaugh, when he was in high school during that period of time. So you definitely, have to take that into consideration. That so many people would come and vouch for his character after this allegation was put forward. There was a lady who made a Facebook post, and she says that she knew Mrs. Ford, and or went to high school with Mrs. Ford, rather. And she came out and basically said in this Facebook post that the allegations were true. Well, she then had to come out and retract that statement because, according to her, she got so much attention. But the fact of the matter is that she retracted the statement, basically completely, and is now saying, "Oh, well, I heard about things like that going on at the high school, at that time." Not the same thing, even, close to the same thing as saying that those specific allegations are true. And the allegations themselves that she's made, they don't actually have a ton of veracity, as I will get into here in a little bit. So, one of the key things is that Mrs. Ford, she never said anything about this to anybody until 2012. In 2012, she told a therapist, a couples therapist, she was going through couples therapy, that that this happened to her, basically. And that was her first time describing the event to anybody, according to her. And that was in 2012. And the allegations that she made to her therapist, according to the therapist's notes, don't actually match the claim that she's making today. So in the therapist's notes, she said that there were 4 boys with her, and that that the situation was with 4 boys, basically, or that's how the therapist took it, supposedly. According to her, it was a misinterpretation by the therapist. According to her, she said that that there was 4 boys at the party, but only 2 in the room, and he apparently took that as there being 4 boys in the room. So, it may or may not have been the therapist that misheard her, or that could have been what she said. We don't know. But the fact of the matter is, the claim in the notes is different than the claim that she's making. So, in the session with this therapist, she didn't actually name Brett Kavanaugh. She didn't name anybody in particular, in specific. She didn't name even the 2 people who were not in the room. She just said that this situation happened and sort of described it in kind of a general sense to the therapist. Now, she doesn't remember the year that it took place. She says that it took place somewhere in the summer, early 1980s, probably 1982, but she's not sure exactly what year it took place. She doesn't know the exact location. She doesn't know whether or not Brett Kavanaugh and Mark Judge, were upstairs before her, or if she went upstairs and then they followed her. She also doesn't know how she got home, and she was admittedly intoxicated. So, with all that taken into account, it's not a strong case based on evidence. As a matter of fact, it's about as flimsy of a case based on evidence that you could possibly have. You've got an allegation made by one person from 30 years ago where she remembers almost no supporting details, and and this claim is in contrast to a vast, array of people who have come out in support of Judge Kavanaugh and his character, people from that same time period. Um, so just based on the evidence, just based on the evidence alone, there's really no case. There's really no case to be made here uh, whatsoever. I mean, there's no supporting details. It's it's as much of a he said she said situation as there could possibly be. There's no way for Judge Kavanaugh to defend himself when it comes to this. If there were supporting details, then perhaps, for example, say Judge Kavanaugh said, "Well, no, I was here at this particular date." Well, if she could, you know, prove that she was at a certain, place at a certain specific time, and she could also prove that Judge Kavanaugh was there as well, and prove that he wasn't where he claimed to be, for example, that would, be evidence that would obviously prove that she's probably right. But we can't get anything like that with the lack of recollection, that she has on this event, assuming that it actually happened, something like she says that it happened. Um, so there's obviously been a ton of fallout from this. It's completely, caused an already chaotic situation in the confirmation hearing for a Supreme Court justice to become, absolutely nuclear. Now, the Republicans have responded to this by coming out and saying that, look, you guys knew about this since July, which is true. Senator Feinstein had this information since July. Now, it's true that that Mrs. Ford did want to stay anonymous, but the thing is, Mrs. Feinstein, when she was interviewing basically Judge Kavanaugh, um, she could have asked him about those claims without the type of specificity that would have given away who she was. So she could have remained anonymous, and he could have been questioned about those claims and made a statement on the record at the time. But Feinstein is saying that she is basically the reason she didn't come out with it is because she was respecting her request to remain anonymous, Mrs. Ford's request. Which, okay, fine. The thing is, it still got leaked. It probably got leaked by the media, and that's the reason that it got put into this, that it got thrust into the spotlight in the first place. At this absolute last minute. Remember, it was on the 20th that the Senate Judiciary Committee was going to vote to move forward with the nomination of Kavanaugh, and then the full Senate would then vote on him. At the last minute, this allegation got brought up, and now that Mrs. Ford, her story has leaked out, she has basically come out and said that she is willing to testify. Her lawyer has said that she does want her story to be heard. Well, the Republicans, they set the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, he set a deadline for Monday for her to come and testify, for Miss Ford to come and testify. She could come and testify in an open setting, in a closed setting, or they even gave her the option of certain members of Congress, of the committee, coming to her actually, at where she lives, and actually allowing her to do it in that setting, and she wouldn't even have to go to Washington in that case. So they gave her every available opportunity, and again, Miss Ford was the one who brought these allegations out, even if it was anonymously. She at least tacitly wanted to have her story be told, and now she's saying that she does want it to be told. They've gave her a deadline. And of course, that's not good enough. So Miss Ford and her lawyer have come out and basically said that what they want is an FBI investigation before she will testify. Well, the problem with that is, for one thing, Judge Kavanaugh has actually been cleared 6 times by the FBI when they do their background checks for him to be put in different judicial positions because he's been a judge and been involved in the legal arena for decades. So so he's gone through something like 6 FBI background checks. With the allegation that she made, Miss Ford, there's actually no federal crime there. Even if what she said actually happened as she said, there's no actual federal crime there. What it would be is potentially a state crime. It could be, for example, sexual assault, misdemeanor sexual assault, potentially felony, sexual assault. But that situation, as she described, would probably be misdemeanor sexual assault. There's also a statute of limitations on things like that. I believe it's a year. So even if it was brought at the state level, because of the statute of limitations, there really would be no crime. There wouldn't be any crime that he could actually get convicted for. Also, because of the lack of any sort of supporting details or corroboration on her claim, there's nothing to investigate. I mean, the FBI, they can't go back in time or something. They can't read her mind. I mean, there's really nothing for. I mean, I guess they could question the other 2 people that were supposedly there. I mean, I'm not sure what more the FBI could do, beyond what they've already done in terms of clearing Judge Kavanaugh, and also in terms of investigating this specific claim, again, because of the lack of any details. So, according to ABC News, in the text of an email, Ford's lawyer, Deborah Katz, said, quote, "She wishes to testify, provided we can agree on terms that are fair and which ensure her safety," noting that Ford has received death threats, which obviously is terrible. It wasn't clear whether Ford was willing to testify in public, in private, or in some other form. The letter from Ms. Ford's legal team also said it is not possible, quote unquote, for Ford to testify on Monday's scheduled hearing, as Republicans want, saying, quote, "The committee's insistence that it occur then is arbitrary in any event." The letter also made clear that Ford's, quote, "strong preference continues to be for the Senate Judiciary Committee to allow for a full investigation prior to her testimony." So what they're saying is, you set this deadline by Monday. That's not soon enough, or that's too soon, rather. I'll testify next week, but not on Monday. And then also claiming that they still want an FBI investigation, which can't even happen. Dianne Feinstein referred this situation to the FBI, and they already came back and said, we can't do anything with this. There just isn't anything that they can do with that. Again, they can't travel back in time or something. So what's going on here is, this is obviously, the Democrats are attempting to delay, is what they're attempting to do. Now, in terms of the veracity of this woman's claim, she took a polygraph test. She took a polygraph test in August, and the polygraph said that she was basically telling the truth in the sense that the question that was asked to her is basically, is a summary of the events that you described accurate? And she said yes. And the polygraph didn't sense through its physical cues that she was potentially lying. Well, the problem with a polygraph is that they're not actually admissible in court. And the reason is because they're extremely unreliable. For example, Roy Moore. the Senate candidate in Alabama, who was credibly accused of molesting underage girls, he also passed a polygraph test. Now, if people want to go by the polygraph as, being some sort of standard for whether or not somebody is innocent or guilty, by that standard, Roy Moore was innocent, which obviously is wrong. There was a clear case that he was credibly accused of of molesting, again, underage girls. There was a pattern of abuse. And speaking of a pattern of abuse, I want to now talk about Keith Ellison for a second. Keith Ellison, if you don't know, is the deputy chair of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. He has now been accused by two women of abuse. So this is from Vox. On Saturday night, the son of Ellison's ex-girlfriend, Karen Monahan, wrote a lengthy Facebook post saying that he saw a video of Ellison grabbing his mother and swearing at her in a bedroom. This is the second time Ellison has been publicly accused of domestic violence. Another woman, Amy Louise Alexander, spoke out in 2006, going public with her account that Ellison verbally abused her while they were having an affair. She said that he grabbed and pushed her during an argument. Ellison denied even having a relationship with her. There are several similarities between the accounts. Both women were involved in Minnesota progressive politics, and they described Ellison losing his temper and using threats, verbal harassment, and violence. And violence. So what you have here is a clear example of a double standard, a clear example of people morally posturing. What's going on here is, and keep in mind, I think that something did happen to Miss Ford. I think that she probably is telling the truth in some sense. Now, I don't think that necessarily means it happened exactly like she thinks it does, or even that it was necessarily actually Brett Kavanaugh that was involved in that situation. That being said, what you have here is a clear example of a double standard. This is a high-ranking member of the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, the deputy chair, who is credibly accused of domestic abuse, and there's complete silence by the party. So what I'm trying to say here is consistency is what we need here. We need honesty and consistency and integrity in evaluating these situations. We need, we need moral consistency. We don't need people to just go after somebody when there's an accusation like this just because they don't like them, first of all. And second of all, try to just say that simply because somebody makes an accusation with no supporting evidence, that's enough to destroy somebody's career and life. Now, keep in mind, with Keith Ellison and with Roy Moore, again, there was supporting evidence. Like with Roy Moore's case, for example, some of the girls that women now, but girls then that said that they were abused by him were able to say, look, I was here, say at a mall on this day, and they were able to also prove that Roy Moore was also at that mall on that same day. So it's those kind of supporting pieces of evidence that really lend credibility to a claim like that. Roy Moore also himself admitted that he basically, went after underage girls, that he went after underage girls when he was 30, pretty much, or young girls when he was 30, or in his 30s. Keith Ellison, there's actually a picture from medical records of the more recent accuser, and she, in the medical records, shows that she indeed was talking to her doctor at least about this incident. This isn't something that she just claims happened, right now. She was at least, making these accusations, in a more private setting to her doctor previously. So there's way more evidence for Keith Ellison, for example, that he actually did abuse women. Very recently, mind you. But there's complete silence from the Democrats. So the problem is you've just got this clear case where people are only using this example to try to take somebody out because they don't like them, because they don't want to see Judge Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. They know he's qualified. They know full well that these claims, A, can't be proven, and B, have, quite frankly, quite a bit of evidence against them, and no supporting evidence to be able to, actually prove the claims. Um, what's going on here is a delay tactic. The Democrats are using this woman. They're using Miss Ford, and they're using her for a delay tactic. They want to try to hold off this confirmation process. That's why they don't want the hearing to happen on Monday. They don't want the hearing to happen at all. That's why they would love for there to be some, mystical time-traveling FBI investigation that lasts forever. If they can just stall this out until the midterms, they're hoping that they can potentially win the Senate. And if they can do that, then obviously someone like Judge Kavanaugh is never going to be confirmed. But at bare minimum, they want to try to delay this confirmation as much as possible and try to smear Judge Kavanaugh with the label of a rapist or potential rapist, and also use it to try to say that the Republicans are trying to attack this woman, Miss Ford, and try to push her forward into the limelight to get her, to testify. So that's the tactic that's going on from the Democrats. As far as these cases, these need to be taken seriously. When a woman comes out and says something like this, it needs to be taken seriously. But women need to, and I know it has to be tough, but women need to be able to come out sooner. The sooner that these claims can be made, the more details that someone's going to be able to remember, the easier it's going to be to collect the evidence to be able to go after somebody. And let's say Brett Kavanaugh did actually do what she claims. She says that she's afraid now because he's in, a position of power. Well, he wasn't in a position of power when he was 17. So we need to be able to address these situations as soon as possible. Also, we need evidence. We need to have evidence. That is one of the foundational principles of our constitutional republic is innocence. You are innocent until proven guilty. It's not the other way around. It can't be the other way around. With all that being said, if she's not willing to testify on Monday, I think they need to go forward with the nomination. I think they need to go forward with it because this is clearly, at this point, a tactic that is being used. And again, this lady, Miss Ford, is being used by the Democrats. It was people in the media or potentially the Democrats that leaked this information in the first place. It's the Republicans who have tried to give her a platform to tell her story, even though this last-minute accusation came in and just completely screwed up this process when it wasn't brought up in the hearings whatsoever. It's completely ridiculous. It's a total joke. Not her claim, not her experience, what she's gone through, but the situation, the way it's been handled by the Democrats, is truly egregious. So they just need to go forward with the nomination. That's my point of view. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe and give me a like and all that good stuff. Tell your friends, tell your parents, tell your mom, tell everybody. And with that, I hope you learned something. Hope it was informative. Yeah, let me leave me some comments. Let me know what you think. And if you would like, let me know what other videos you would like me to make or come up with. With that, I hope you have a wonderful day, and may the